Hello, America. Welcome to the Junto Podcast, where we promote the practical applications of critical thinking and bold creativity. I'm your host, Edgar Mills. Thank you for joining us. Hello, good people. Welcome back, and thank you for sticking with me. So today, I want to talk about, essentially a hobby, a thing that I like to do and have done in the past and would love to do more, and that is the sport of rock climbing. And as a sport, and we're going to talk about it a little bit as a lifestyle, because there is a unique lifestyle out there of rock climbers. And then kind of the community that it builds, and why indoor climbing gyms are become kind of like little community hubs amongst physically fit people. If you've never been climbing, if you've never tried it, I hope this sparks your interest, because it really is fun. And if you're an experienced climber, or you have climbed or do it pretty regularly, then hopefully this will resonate a little bit and, just keep you motivated. Rock climbing's tough. Yeah, you use your hands and your feet, but also your mind, right? It's very very much problem solving to, climb up a rock from the base to the top, whether it's a wall or a rock or whatever, as safely as possible. But I would say I used to think rock climbing was inherently unsafe. And if you don't know what you're doing, it is. But just like jumping out of an airplane, if you trust the equipment and implement the equipment correctly, then it's easy breezy. But it does combine, I want to say problem solving, but I mean like puzzle solving. Some of the routes, if at indoor gyms, they have routes marked different colors, and some of those routes are incredibly difficult, and it's a puzzle to be solved, contorting your body in such a way. And it does require physical strength and very acute mental focus. You have to be there. When you're on the wall, you have to be there completely. So it's good. It's fun, and it keeps you physically fit and mentally fit. So there's a lot of different disciplines when it comes to climbing, folks. A lot of them, especially when you get into outdoor stuff. So we'll talk about a few, and one of them is bouldering. And bouldering is basically short routes that don't require rope. And most people, when you boulder, you have a pad underneath if you're at an outdoor place. Or at indoor gyms, there's just padded areas and stuff like that. And, maybe up to 20 feet or so, not that high. But it kind of focuses on strength and power and like creative movement to solve these sort of complex problems, even though they're not that high up. It's definitely sport climbing for sure. But then as we get into sport climbing, that's where you are, you have your harness and you're on a rope, and you're clipping in protection along pre-placed bolts along the route, and out in the Rocky Mountains especially, but even up here in North Georgia, there's plenty of routes out there that are already bolted, that climbers before us have gone and created these bolts or put in these bolts so that we could sport climb. And then there's traditional climbing. Now, traditional climbing, it all requires skill, but traditional climbing is now where you're putting in temporary protection along the way. Maybe lead climbing, right? You're the first guy up, and there may or may not be no protection on the wall at all. So you're putting in, cams or chocks or whatever and you're putting in the protection, clipping in, and then you'll top rope somebody up. And that's what's out there in the wild. And when you do like multiple pitches or whatever, and that's takes a lot of skill, and it's very taxing physically, but it is fun and rewarding. And then I had a surprise in my career, ice climbing. That's a thing. And it turns out to be pretty fun. Now, it requires a whole lot of specialized equipment, but you're essentially doing traditional climbing on ice. You got crampons and ice axes or ice picks, and the protection you use, instead of being a cam or something like that, or a pre-bolted route, you got these ice screws that you literally screw into the ice. So the skill there is knowing what is good ice and what is bad ice. But it's pretty fun. It's pretty awesome. And just go to Instagram and type in ice climbing. You'll see a whole lot of cool stuff. So I did that once or twice. Once in my career, I think. We went to Ouray, Colorado. And that place is famous for ice climbing because they have a ice climbing festival every year there. And there's like a little canyon in the town, like right in the town. There's a canyon. And along the top of this canyon, they have water lines. And these water lines, they're like sprinklers kind of. It's like a just big long sprinkler, and the water freezes over in the wintertime, and it creates these really, one, visually striking sort of frozen waterfall things. And then, depending on the rock and depending on how everything goes down, it creates these really unique climbing, not routes, but problems. So yeah, it's pretty cool, man. It's pretty fun. For somebody who's scared of heights, which I am, and somebody who hates cold weather, which I do. I was on a mountain team in Special Forces. And I was not the subject matter expert at all on my team. I'm going to give a shout out to my good friend Larry, he's a smart guy, and he got into climbing 100%. He was all in. And when I say smart guy, I mean like autistic smart. Like that guy knew everything about climbing. And he was big. He was heavy. I want to say 250 or so. And that guy climbed like he weighed 120 pounds. It was amazing. Larry. I miss you, Larry. All right. So ice climbing. Yeah, there's different types of climbing you can do. Now, we're in the southeast here in Georgia, and there are some pretty good climbing areas within an hour, or so. And we have Dahlonega, hour and a half or so up the road, or Helen's a couple hours up the road, where there's Mount Yonah, which is where the Ranger School Mountain Phase does their mountaineering stuff. And there's a lot of bolted routes out there. That's a good spot to climb because there's a broad level of difficulty, and there's a good spot to stay out overnight and stuff. I think Sand Rock is over in Alabama, which I haven't been to yet, but I'm trying to get my buddy Nathan let's put something together for another course. So yeah, the disciplines are good. So let's talk a little bit about the lifestyle aspect. So clearly, it's a physical sport, but a unique physical sport. I can tell you this. Yeah, you're going to get big, strong forearms, and you're going to have some really strong grip strength and finger and hand strength. And yes, your core is going to develop because of unique body positions, and your back is going to develop because you do a lot of pulling up. And then, your legs are going to develop because you do a lot of pushing up. But in some of these awkward positions you find yourself in on a rock, there are muscles in your body you don't know about, folks, until you've been 60 feet up and your legs shaking and your arms are shaking and you're trying your best to to become part of the wall, and muscles get excuse me, obscure muscles get worked in there, and it's very good, man. If you look at some of these climbers who do it regularly, right, like lifestyle climbers, they're very lean. They're very lean. They're very low body fat normally, and just all these defined and developed muscles. Just that it's pretty amazing. I was never that. I was never that. But I first got into climbing, well, indoor climbing, when I was at Fort Bragg as an infantryman in the 90s. A friend of mine and a mentor, his name is Steve. He was one of the most fit human beings I've ever known in my life. And he was, well, an aspiring super soldier. And he did go on to become a super soldier. But he would come by the house, man, hey, let's go to the gym, let's go to the rock gym. And we would go and climb, and he was a really skilled climber. But he would do things like, he would stop by, hey man, let's go for a bike ride, and we'd go do a 25-miler real quick. And he was the kind of guy that would do just insane physical things just kind of routinely. And I joined in with him a lot of times, and he broke me off constantly. But it's always good to be around people better than you, always. So back to the climbing. Yeah, he introduced me to, this was in Fayetteville, and I can't remember the name of the climbing gym in Fayetteville, but it was right downtown. And it was like 1 or 2 blocks off of Hay Street. And it was pretty laid back. The environment was laid back, and they had pretty good, it was good. It was a good introduction. So yeah, the physical aspect of the lifestyle, and it's generally speaking healthy. You have to, not that you go on these crazy crash diets, but the heavier you are, the more difficult it is. Yeah. That don't mean you can't fight through it. That just means the more difficult it is. And and it also works flexibility. You have to be flexible, because you do find yourself in these really bizarre positions when you're reaching out for the only hold available is just out of reach, and you're figuring a way out to manipulate your body to reach it without falling, And then it helps build focus, like mental focus. Because like I said, if you're on the wall, you're always looking for the next hold. Where can I put, what's the next thing viable for me to grab hold of? And it really it consumes you mentally, right? You're looking for the next 2 or 3, and you're not just looking for the next one. Just like most things, you're trying to be a couple of moves ahead so you don't climb yourself into a dead end, So it really focuses your mind while you're doing the activity. And that's good, man. It doesn't matter if you even climb well, just it's a thing. It's different, for one. It's an alternative to just going to the normal gym and lifting weights. But it has sort of side effects that are good. It helps manage fear. Rock climbing does. I said earlier, I'm scared of heights. I'm still scared of heights. But I've been in some situations that I was very uncomfortable in, very nervous, like shaky nervous. But you have to do the things. So, your buddy looks at you and said, "Trust the equipment and go." What are you gonna do? You trust the equipment and go. So it helps you manage fear. And yeah, so once you learn to trust the equipment or whatnot, that doesn't mitigate. I mean, it doesn't get rid of the fear. It just mitigates it, but still. And then, believe it or not, it teaches you there's a safe way to fall on the rock, right? So if you're roped in and you're doing top rope and some guy's got you on belay and you're climbing this ridiculous route and you get up there and you get stuck and you're in a spot and you start to go into muscle failure, and Well, I mean, there's not a lot of options. You either hang on and continue going, or you fall. And then when you fall, if your guy's a good belay man, he catches you straight away, and you only fall a few feet, and then you just kind of spread out, and so you don't smack your face on a rock or whatever. So it teaches you how to manage fear a little bit, and then shows you that falling isn't the end all. It's it can be done safely, and by that teaches you how to trust your homies. Climbing seems like an individual sport, and it can be an individual sport, but it's very much, well, at least two-man team event. But if you're doing multi-pitch out in the woods and stuff, out in the mountains, like, it's a team sport, man. There's a lot of stuff going on technical that one guy can do it, but it's couldn't be overwhelming with all the putting in all the anchors and stuff like that. And then so you get all those benefits from it. And then never mind like just the feeling of accomplishment. If you do some route that you have yet to be able to defeat, or you do some crazy climb that you just didn't think you could do it. Yeah, it feels pretty good. And then another side effect of getting into the rock climbing sport, even indoor or outdoor, they're both kind of inextricably connected. But the rock climbing community, you sort of develop I don't want to say environmentalism, right? A commitment to the environment, though. You develop a desire to be a good steward of the trails and stuff like that. Because all the outdoor rock climbing, that's in natural areas that, Joshua Tree or Yosemite or Estes Park, thousands of people go there. Could you imagine if thousands of people were just leaving trash all over the place? How ghetto and junky it would be. And then that defeats some of the lure of climbing. And a lot of climbers, just like a lot of hunters, I say this a lot, are, pretty active in conservation efforts. I say a lot that hunters are more environmentalists than environmentalists are. Because, yeah, you're out there in the woods. You're the one firsthand, as a climber or as a hunter, you're the one out there on the ground firsthand seeing the effects of people who trash the environment. And generally speaking, and this follows again with shooter, hunters, and climber, right? Leave no trace. You take nothing with you, you leave nothing behind. You go to the woods, you do what you do, you pack all your stuff up, and you leave it better than you found it. And if you see trash along the way that you didn't leave, pick it up, take it with you. Yeah. And a lot of climbing crews, they'll get together for like a day, trail maintenance day or go clean the wall day. And they back organizations that help advocate for, maintaining the climbing areas and stuff like that. So there's that environmental sort of aspect, and that's a good thing, folks. That's a good thing. Nobody wants to see trash. For whatever reason in the ghetto, people just love to throw stuff around. There's a lack of ownership there. Well, here's the thing. Out in the mountains, you don't own that mountain. You don't have a sense of ownership over it, but you still want to maintain its beauty. It's a natural thing that everyone owns and no one owns. So you have a responsibility to sort of just, by doing your part, I mean, just simply don't leave trash behind and pick up any that you may see. Anytime I'm talking about this, I refer to my friend, Trail Trash Dirtbag on Instagram, who's an avid outdoor guy, cycling and hiking and all that stuff. And he's always got an extra trash bag with him. And when you're out in the woods, you see trash, you pick it up, stick it in the bag, take it with you. Don't cost you anything. Don't hurt nothing. Don't add that much weight. So yeah, the environmental bit. That's it. And even as an indoor climber, at some point you're going to get outdoors. You're going to get the bug. If you go to an indoor gym, at some point you're going to get the bug, and then you're going to want to go do bigger and better things. And then here's another thing in my experience I've discovered about the climbing community, especially. So we did a lot of stuff, and because I was at Fort Carson and we went to the Rockies a lot. We were the climbing community, the people who climb, and I mean the civilian, just everyday people. They're extremely supportive, and I'm going to draw the same parallel with shooting sports. If you go to a shooting match, I don't care what discipline it is, and you're brand new, there's no shortage of human beings that are going to help you to be successful. Exactly the same with climbing. Yeah, man. People, they'll spot you. They'll belay for you. They'll share gear with you. You know, they'll cheer you on when you're up there on a hard spot. And that's a good environment where strangers are out there like, well, and at the end of the day, you're not a stranger anymore. Now your network has just expanded. Yeah. And it might not mean much to some people to get encouragement from a stranger, but hey, some people are just genuinely excited to see other people succeed or at least try, right? So the community's good in that way, the community aspect itself. And they're not all granola eating hippie whatevers. There's a lot, and I imagine politically speaking, there's a lot of liberal types, but also there's a lot of I guess conservative types. I know that there's a lot of former military folks that like to climb because you get exposed to it in the Army in little bits and pieces here, and some people latch onto it. I know that in basic training, I assume they still rappel, and it's a very little piece of it, but some people like that stuff. And then I know in the mountain phase of Ranger School, that's what it is, mountain phase. It's a lot of hiking and fixed lines and stuff like that, but you spend a significant amount of time climbing and rappelling and building rope bridges and stuff like that. So people in the military get a taste of it. And why is climbing so appealing for that is because, it's kind of like, Boy Scout activities, right? It takes you back to when you're a kid a little bit. When you were a kid, you loved to go swing on a rope over the lake or build a rope climbing up into a tree or something. But now you learn how to do proper knots and you learn how to do things. And it's basically just being a big kid, basically. That might be a simplification, but it kind of is, man. It's it's one of those little Boy Scout skills, tying knots and doing rope bridges and rappelling and things like that. It's awesome. For those of you who've never been in the military or done it, you feel a little bit like a commando, I guess, when you're doing stuff like when you're rappelling, when you step off of that ledge, and you're rappelling down, feels pretty cool. So climbing as a sport, there is a pretty, low threshold to getting into it. You can go to most any indoor rock gym and get a day pass that comes with like you rent the shoes, you rent the harness and the belay device, and there you are. You're ready to roll for $35. You can go climb and start learning things. And even if you decide to buy your own stuff before you even get started, you've done some research or you've got some buddies who tell you some good stuff to buy. You can get a harness for $65, $70. And then maybe a chalk bag, you need chalk to keep your hands dry and grippy. And then as much as I hate them, then you need a pair of climbing shoes, probably. And climbing shoes, I compare to ballet shoes. They crunch your toes into a point. But the thing about the climbing shoes is the reason they're so tight is so they don't have any give. And then they have, specialized, like pretty sticky soles on them that are real thin but grippy, so that they kind of not perfectly stick, but they a lot of friction. They provide a lot of friction. So you need a harness, chalk bag, pair of shoes, and then some belay device for belaying your homie or for rappelling or whatever. That's the bare minimum stuff, and a locking carabiner. And so for $250, you can start climbing, man. And that's with your own stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it's a low entry threshold. And the reality is, shooting sports are like that too. Once you get a gun, but if you go buy $600, Glock, whatever, and then you got $50 belt, $40 holster, and then it's just ammo after that. So, and then as you get into the sport, everybody starts buying all this sexy stuff. And rock climbing is the same way. It's not a gear intensive until you get into other disciplines. So multi-pitch climbing, yeah, you need gear, right? Now you need your harness and you need your shoes, but now you need maybe some approach shoes, or at least some shoes that are good and grippy. So when you're scrambling, getting up to the climbing point, you still need some pretty good shoes. And then a lot of places make you wear a helmet. Well, not make you, a lot of organizations make you wear a helmet. And then you need all the protection, right? You need a set of cams or like nuts, the chocks, and all that. And they come in different sizes, from like super ridiculously small up to super ridiculously big. And you got to carry that stuff with you. You might even need to carry extra rope with you. And then you got a rope bag. The rope wants to be protected, so you got a rope bag. And then, so there's a lot of stuff that you can get out of control with the gear for sure. Like ice climbing, for instance, you got to have crampons, which are they're just spikes attached to your very specialized climbing boots, which cost, $400 upwards. And you need ice axes or ice picks, which are very expensive. And then, ice climbing, then you need cold weather gear that's suitable for being in the ice all day. And then the ice screws. Yeah, you need a whole setup for ice screw, various sizes and a multitude of. So it can get very expensive. Yeah, that's true. And you may need, I don't know, you need runners. You need tons of carabiners and runners. And then there's specialized stuff, a gree that's like sort of an auto-locking, belay device. And then there's ascenders where you can ascend a rope. You attach them in a certain way, snap a carabiner to it, and then you have some étriers or something hanging off that you can step into. Man, it goes on and on. There's tons of specialized stuff, and that's just great, and it's just fine. But the skill is the skill, just like shooting. The skill is a technical skill. Can you climb? Can you get to a point, hold yourself, clip into a piece of protection? And can you make the moves you need to climb? And can you do it for a sustained period of time? After that, all the extra stuff is just little added layers. It's very fun. I know I'm making it sound. All you need is shoes and a harness. And if you're bouldering, you don't even need a harness, folks. Just some shoes and a chalk bag. And maybe a pad. So there's beginner level, and then there's just simple, all the way up to just very detailed, very gear intensive stuff. And it's all fun. It's all awesome. And you can slowly build up your little arsenal of climbing gear over time. And that's it. So who climbs? I talked about the community a little bit, and I said, oh, they're not just all granola eaters. Yeah, that's right. I think climbing, and this is from going to different climbing gyms and being at some different places. I think climbing kind of draws a semi-diverse range of people, mainly like college students, right? It's an alternate sport, just like shooting is an alternate sport. Not everybody is a friggin' football player, baseball player, or whatever. And once you get up into college age, if you're not a friggin' athlete, like proper athlete, you know, what's your sport? What do you do? Do you still like sports? You can either spend your time going patting some athlete on the ass, or you can spend your time going and doing another sport, which I think climbing is a perfect alternative, especially for college and high school age students. I mean, it gives them I'll get to it. And I mentioned, so college students, I think, have a big draw to climbing. And then I think veterans, there's a big draw to it as well. Because like I said, you get exposed early in the military to it, and some people latch on, and it's good. And if you're a combat veteran, if you're fighting some kind of PTSD or whatever it is, I spoke of the focus, and that's a good place to focus. Your mind is consumed with making sure that your knots are right and that you're clipping in to the protection correctly, and that you're looking for your next handhold, and it focuses you for that period of time while you're at the rock gym. You're pretty focused, man, which takes your mind off of other things that might not be healthy. And if you're at the rock gym, you ain't drinking, right? And then again, I spoke earlier of how the community itself is very supportive and uplifting. That's a perfect place for a veteran, especially somebody having some reintegration issues or whatnot. So college students and veterans, yeah, for sure. And then there's I don't know, hardcore adventurer types. Yeah, people who are out there just to chase the challenge, to doing these high level routes or going out for weeks at a time to these big walls and places like friggin' Patagonia or Yosemite or somewhere. And I'm going to bring up the very first confirmed ascent of Mount Everest, which we all know is the highest peak in the world, was in 1953, and that was Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, his mountaineer Sherpa. So yeah, what were they out there for? They were on an expedition. It was led by, I think, some Brits or something, but I think Hillary was New Zealander. But yeah, man, they were out there looking for adventure. They were looking to peak the highest point on Earth. And they did. That's just chasing adventure. There's no reason to do that other than just a sense of adventure. And climbing does that. So, and a lot of these hardcore adventurers, they'll be at they use the indoor gym as a train, just like anybody uses any gym, just to train up, to get physically fit and to get strong and to practice some specific things. And then they take it out to the big wall. And then, so you got college students, which, yes, they love it. And I think any college town would benefit. You got veterans, because there's already a loose connect, they already have been exposed. And then you got your adventure class, the hardcore adventurers out there, who I assume are independently wealthy. I can only assume. And then you got everyday people. So let's talk about everyday people, because that's what I am. I'd say I'm an everyday people. And, there might be office dudes, you know what I mean? Professional, white collar guys in their 30s and 40s. And that's, instead of going and lifting weights, they go to the rock gym, because it's a definite unique alternative to a gym. So and it's a good alternative sport. And then you got, parents, they bring the kids, right, for the family, for the birthday parties and whatnot, clip your kids to the auto belay system and help them overcome their fears. I've seen kids who were like my daughter, in fact, when she was, I don't even know, man, 6, 7, 8 years old, was like a friggin' spider monkey. And she would hit a wall and just scoot up, and on proper routes too, not just yeah, man, she was crazy. And then there are other kids, you stick them on a wall, they get off the ground and go into panic mode because they're off the ground. Never mind the rope that's attached to them. Never mind you standing right there with them. So it's a good way to break your kids into a little reality of emotional control and a little bit of fear, learning how to deal with some fear. Well, and even grown folks for that matter. And surprisingly, you'll see if you're at the rock gym. We used to go to Sports Climbing Center in Colorado, in on sort of the west side, just off Garden of the Gods, and that was my favorite. There was City Rock, which we went to a little bit too, but I liked Sports Climbing Center better. There were men and women in there, and they're like freaking 60s, just lean as hell, and studying routes and scooting up a wall like nobody's business. Staying healthy. Yeah, staying healthy. So regular people, there's an appeal because it's a very low pressure, low stress environment. And again, in a comparison to shooting sports, climbing, much like shooting, is accommodating for any age range and actually any personality type and actually any gender, right? It's open to all. There's no barrier. Now, health-wise, there is, right? You need to, I don't even say you need to be somewhat physically fit. Just like any gym, if you're trying to lose weight, you can go to the rock gym, get on some kind of diet, go to the rock gym, and you will start your journey. You know what I mean? So it's accommodating for just about anyone. But it's also accommodating for that that loner type, right? That solitary loner out there who prefers to be in his own head and focus. And you'll see guys like that at the gym too. They don't really talk to anyone. They just sit there and stare at the wall for 10 minutes and then they go and try a thing. They might have a homie with them for belaying or whatever, yeah, man. So it's conducive to all types. And if you're just there, it's conducive to the social butterfly. Because again, the rock gym can be a very social place. It is a very social place. There's a lot of people that link up there, after their various jobs or after school or whatever. They'll link up there and just sit and bullcrap, maybe even not climb. And you know what's the shooting's very much like that, where it's very much a social environment. And I see that at my place a lot because we're very low stress around here, very informal. So if we're doing a match or if we're doing a little workshop or something, yeah, man, everybody's sitting around bullshit and talking about whatever other things too. And if you're a social person, that's it. That's what you do. It's just another place for a casual gathering. The intensity level depends on you, right? And the group that you're in with and what the goals are. Just like at the rock gym, just like at the range. If you're out there trying to prep for some upcoming big match, you ain't out there bullshitting. You're out there focused, and that's okay too. That's fine. That's what it's for. So I've been talking about climbing in general, but really the focus, I want to talk about kind of the role of indoor gyms and how their benefit, to communities, right? Especially smaller communities. Big cities have everything, and you might get you got built-in humans in a city, right? There's going to be people at the gym in a city. But what about smaller towns? I'm telling Rome, where I live, does not have a rock climbing gym. The nearest one is about an hour away. I'm not going to drive an hour or a couple times a week to go climb. I just don't have that kind of time. But they're good in smaller towns, those that have them. In the gym environments, just like a coffee shop or just like a restaurant or just like any other retail place, they have a wide variety of different sort of vibes and environments. And Some are very relaxed. Rock gyms, I mean, are very relaxed. The atmosphere is very chill, and they're always playing chill music, kind of low. And there's a lot like couches all over, and it's just very relaxed, right? Natural lighting, and they might have artwork up from locals, and there might even be friggin' plants and shit in there, and they got a little coffee bar. Some are, and I like that environment. So you can go climb, and then you can go sit and bullcrap and get on Wi-Fi and or hang out with your homies and kick your shoes off like you're at the house and just chill out and talk. I like that environment. And then there's some bigger spaces that can, I don't know, there was one in Bouldering in Germany. The last time I was there was a facility there, and it was newish, and it had a very sort of industrial vibe. It was very German, if you want to say it that way. It was very, man, I hate to say cold, but the color scheme, yes, all the rock climb holds, they're all very colorful, but the walls themselves were like prison gray, which, whatever. And they did have tall walls, and it was a very high ceiling, and it was just a very almost empty feeling, except not. There was walls everywhere, and they had very specified zones for things, and there was the high walls, and then over there was a bouldering space, and over here were the auto belay systems. And yeah, it was very cold, but you go there, some people ain't there for the chill vibe. Some people are there to work on a thing. And this place happened to have, I can't remember how high. I want to say 40, 50-foot walls inside. I can't remember offhand. So it felt very different but if you're there for that, right? If it's all about work, be there, do that. And like I said, I think like Rome doesn't have a rock climbing gym, but I think smaller towns like Rome would benefit because Rome has a handful of colleges. And the rock gym, and this was very much so in Colorado, the sports climbing center, that was the third space. My daughter and me have started messing around with exploring the concept of the third space. And everybody needs a third space. For some people, it's the rain. You got home. That's where you sleep. That's where you eat your meals and whatnot. Then you have work, whatever that is. That's your second space. That's where you're at most of the time. Or that's where you're awake most of the time. And everybody needs a third space, a place to go. Oh, for a lot of guys, it's the pub. And that's great. And what comes to mind is like, if you guys remember the old sitcom from the 80s, Cheers, every time Norm walked in, everybody in the bar yelled, "Norm!" Everybody knew him. That was his third space. He sat at the same spot at the end of the bar. And that was it. And that's awesome. And I love the pub. But it's not very productive. Yeah. And I want to say, I was looking this up. A sociologist sort of came up with that concept. His name is Ray Oldenburg. And I think he wrote a book, The Great Good Place. But the thing about the third space is that home is where you live. It's not necessarily an involuntary or voluntary function. Work is kind of sort of voluntary, but like you have to work, right? But the third space is a voluntary space. That's where you have chosen to go to be in that location for whatever the vibe, the people, the skill, the activity, the coffee, whatever it is. So that's what I believe the rock gym is in some of these smaller towns, Well, and even in a big town for that matter. And I think like any business, if you run it well, that it fills that role. It welcomes you there. You like being there, and that's it. You don't have a responsibility to your third place. And your third place doesn't make any demands upon you. That's where you choose to go be. to exert whatever responsibility and demands you have on yourself. Just like the gym. For some people, the gym is the third space. For some people, the range is the third space. Yeah. So I like that idea. And I like the idea of the gym being that, the rock gym being that. What's another good thing about the rock gym? Well, sort of cross-generational interaction. I told you at SCC there were a lot of college type students because University of Colorado was right there. Well, Colorado, University of Colorado Springs, and then there was Colorado College down the road, Pikes Peak University, whatever. There's a lot of college students. Yes, there were. But then there was also, like I said, there was older folk like in their 60s who were friggin', locals, local outdoor hippie types or friggin' professor at the college or a doctor. Who knows what they do until you interact with them. But you might be you might be 19 starting your first semester of college, and you're standing shoulder to shoulder at a wall with a 65-year-old dude who's got thousands of climbs under his belt, and you're over here trying to figure a problem out, and he's like, try this, man. Hey, did you think about that? And now you have a relationship with someone you normally wouldn't. Yeah. And then gym, like at even normal gyms, like weight training gyms, and like even at ranges, they normally there's like some kind of board, like cork board or chalkboard or community board up where people post up like gear trades or gear for sale, or a climbing trip coming up, looking for folks to join on a climbing trip, or a cleanup, like, hey, we're going to do a river cleanup, on this date, volunteer, take a number, whatever. So that's there, and that's a very much a thing at a rock climbing gym, and I like that. So I keep talking about small towns, especially college towns. Yeah, I think a rock gym would benefit any small town. And you're thinking to yourself, well, Edgar, what about the market? Will the market support it? What's the numbers look like and all that? And that's, yeah. But I think if you have a college nearby, I think that's a huge step right there. Huge step. And then if your town, for instance, Piedmont, Alabama. Now, I didn't know anything about Piedmont, Alabama until I did Talladega National Forest is down there, and I do a land navigation course down there. So by virtue of doing that, me and my son went to a local pizza place in Piedmont. Well, that place was a little hub of outdoor activity. And turns out Piedmont has a pretty robust sort of outdoor scene, you know what I'm saying? There's a river go through. They do kayaking and things. There's a lot of mountain bike races that go through, like the Pinhoti Trail goes through there. And so I think if your town is even in proximity to some of that outdoor type activity, a rock gym is perfect. I think so. It's the rock gym is just a great alternative for sporting alternative. And it's a great fitness alternative. And it's a great place a great social alternative. Yeah, I think so. And it encourages fitness in a way that's, nobody says, how much do you bench press or how much do you squat? It encourages fitness in a different way. And then the awareness of nature, right? If you're into a rock gym, most people who are there probably care about the environment a little bit, and that's a benefit. Good people, believe it or not. Yeah, and then the friendships that you might build along the way. You might have a buddy who you end up you belay him once or twice, and now next thing you know, you and him are climbing partners. So there's all that. So climbing, whether it's indoor or outdoor climbing, it builds our capacity. It builds our physical capacity, mental capacity. Hell, man, I'm even going to argue that especially outdoor climbing builds our spiritual capacity. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. when you're on some gigantic high mountain somewhere and you're looking off into God's creation and you see nothing but mountain peaks, no power lines, no roads, no anything except just a bunch of nature and mountain peaks. And you're up high enough that you're like in the clouds looking out. Man, there's a spiritual connection there. And then there's the athletic sense of accomplishment, right? Whether you're brand new or you're, old school climber, when you complete some difficult route, yeah, it feels good. And then especially if you're up there on that peak, right, looking out at the mountains, and you've done that hard thing, and you're up there out of breath, probably cold as hell, just soaking in creation, and even watching other people. One of my favorite scenes in a movie, and it wasn't a feat of athleticism, it was a guy talking about a feat of athleticism. If you guys ever saw Vision Quest from the 80s, so it was about a wrestler, right? High school kid going through the wrestling tournament. But his buddy that he worked with at a hotel, and I can't remember his name now, but after school, the main character worked at a hotel, like as a room service guy. And this other guy was like the cook. But this other guy was supporting him in his, journey in this wrestling journey. And he started, I don't know if he had having cold feet, but the old guy, the cook, was like describing when he watched Pele do that famous kick where he jumped over and did like a backflip and kicked and scored a goal, right? And this guy was describing that. And it was one of the most brilliant acting moments. And he was describing it in such an emotional way of being so floored by this feat of athleticism that this human being, just like him, if one human being can do this thing, oh my God, it was a magical piece of dialogue right there, well, monologue. Now, I'm not going to tell you anything as inspiring as that, but when I mentioned my friend Larry, that joker, I hit 250, 260 maybe. I have seen that guy lead climb, 5'10", maybe 5'11", maybe even harder routes than that. Yeah, it's a little inspiring to watch a guy that size negotiate a mountain. Man, it's a little inspiring. I wasn't in tears, but I mean, it's a little inspiring. So look, well, rock climbing, yeah, it's good. It's fun. And if you climb, hit me up with some stories or experiences, man. Yeah, dude. And if you do not climb or have not yet tried climbing, I strongly encourage you to find a spot. If you're in Northwest Georgia, I know there's a couple of spots over in Kennesaw, a couple of rock gyms. If you're even further northwest or further west in Alabama, there's a rock climbing gym in Gadsden. And then there's always North Georgia mountains. You can find routes, natural routes. And do I know the website offhand? A mountain guide, maybe? Sorry for this. I want to give you guys a good website. Well, I can't find it offhand. There's a website. I don't know why I can't remember it offhand. But you can do a search for routes in your state, whatever, and it gives you all the information of where there's already, bolted routes or bouldering or whatever type of climbing it is. It'll give you that. And believe it or not, there's some in Atlanta, like downtown Atlanta. There's some bouldering places or spots you can go bowl. Now you may need to take a gun with you, but there's some spots. You make sure you got a pad on the ground so when you fall, you don't fall onto a friggin' needle. But there's a lot of spots, man. There's a lot of opportunity out there to start climbing. Don't do it willy-nilly because it is dangerous. And this was a running joke when I was there on the team, is that I am one of the safest climbers on the planet, because if you tell me to build an anchor, you better believe that anchor is going to hold a tank. I don't put up with any good enough stuff when it comes to climbing. Well, because I do not want to fall and break every bone in my body and live. Do you know what I'm saying? Anyway, I hate to leave you. I don't want to leave you with that. I don't want to leave you with that. Climbing is good. Physical fitness, mental fitness, spiritual fitness, community. And it's just a good third space to be. All right, good people. Thank you for listening to this one. This was just me kind of ranting on about a thing I like. Thank you for listening. So please check our stuff. We got matches coming up. We got workshop and wild cards coming up. 2 team guys is always out there to schedule. We always have land navigation ready to go. If you and a small group of people want to land nav, we can put together any course that is in our catalog on 2teamguys.com with, enough lead time. And then we have givesendgo.com/help-a-homie fund. That's our charitable efforts. Please consider giving to it if you're a charitable person. I appreciate you. Other than that, folks, look for the next one coming soon. Next week. Take care. Take care of each other. Be safe, and I love you guys.